Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally ho.
Hey, Cutie Pie.
Hey, Puddin'.
Let's talk about Star Trek Enterprise, Fortunate Son. Directed by LeVar Burton, written by James Duff. Original air date, November 21st, 2001.
In this episode, the Enterprise is sent to assist the Fortunate, an Earth freighter that has been attacked by Nausicaan pirates, but the Fortunate may not be as innocent as it seems.
Now, what'd you think about this episode?
I liked it. It was good Star Trek. I mean, a good human story.
Exactly. A lot of it took place off of the Enterprise as well, so we're getting to see a freighter ship set in that time frame of Enterprise.
Yeah, so we learn more about space travel at this time. At this time in Earth's history, we'll say, you have these freighters, and these people on the freighters have been in space longer than Starfleet.
Yes.
Which of course we already knew from Travis Mayweather.
Yes.
Because he was a boomer, someone born on a freighter.
Mm-hmm.
So now we get to see what it's like what it was probably like when Mayweather was a part of a freighter crew.
You're saying living conditions, things like that.
Yes, and what they had to go through being out there in space. They're basically alone. They don't have Starfleet to answer to. And so they can't threaten anybody with the big guns or anything. They have to fend for themselves.
I mean, this is when we look at the Star Trek universe in general, especially Starfleet, we liken it to the Earth's naval vessels. And the way this freighter ship is, we could say it's kind of like a freighter ship in modern-day oceans. If you're a small freighter ship, especially if you're a smaller one, but there's still a threat of pirates. That is a real-world thing, pirates. It's not something that just happened a couple hundred years ago. And so we're seeing now, first time in the Star Trek universe, the Nausicaans come into play, and that's essentially what they are, space pirates.
And this is the first time chronologically on Star Trek that they've shown the Nausicaans. So now we know that they were around back then in the 22nd century.
And humans had contact with them.
Yeah, and they were baddies back then too.
Mm-hmm.
So I like the interaction with Mayweather and the other guy, Mr. Ryan, on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Now the thing is, we find out at the end when the captain, because the captain had been unconscious, but we find out at the end that he's very wise. So it turns out, like, for the whole episode where he was unconscious, it would have been a very different story if their captain had been awake and in command during the whole time.
Yes.
So with Mr. Ryan, he's the one who has had it because they've had to face the Nausicaans before. He finally had a chance to get something back because they had a Nausicaan hostage. And so the interplay of what's right and what's wrong. I mean at this time there isn't really a prime directive yet, but the Enterprise and their crew, they have this, they still have a higher moral value. They still feel like that they still have to do what's right. And you have to think at this time, the Enterprise feels like they're representing the whole human race. They're representing Earth, whereas the freighter ship, as I said, they're just fending for themselves. They're just who they are. So they have more freedom to do what they want. But Mayweather was still trying to tell them, you can't do this. This is immoral.
See, I had a problem with it because I really did have more compassion for the freighter ship. There's a point where you just keep getting bullied and bullied and bullied, and you got to fight back. I
know. It's like when we were kids and we were bullied. I mean, and yeah, we wanted to fight back. We want something to happen. We got to do something about this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You can't let criminals run the show. And like I said, if you liken this to modern day pirates, you cannot let them just keep attacking small freighters. They have to defend themselves. So, I mean, there are certain things when it comes to Star Trek's moral high ground that, especially at this point where there's no prime directive and there's no federation, there's no one, quote unquote, policing the areas of space. So I see where this crew of the freighter was coming from.
Yeah, it does make you sympathetic to them. I mean, yes, I understand their position in it too. So it was it's a fine line. It's a hard thing to have to consider and what to do next.
Do you really think that the actions of the freighter were reflective of the entire human race?
No, I don't think all humans are like that, but
that's what Captain Archer was trying to say.
Yeah, that was the point, because Archer felt like he was representing most of humanity because he was representing Starfleet. But Mayweather said he's been through these kind of things. He's been in space. He's had to confront pirates, or at least his parents did.
More and more, I love Mayweather as a character. I mean, he's like the voice of reason character. And I like that they made him so young and an ensign that he doesn't have experience in Starfleet, but he has life experience. And real world life experience does speak for a lot in a person.
This is really, his biggest part so far on this show.
Yes.
And he did well in it. And I'm glad they finally had an episode for him. I know they want to have, one that focuses on all the characters. He did a good job of expressing his side. And so now we get to see more of what space was like for the other people. And another thing this episode shows is how times are changing. I mean, in their context.
Yes.
Because the Enterprise is the fastest ship of its kind, and there are going to be more of the NX class ships, which means space is getting smaller, and which means these freighters are going to have more ships to deal with. They're probably going to they might confront other Starfleet ships later on. So a lot more stuff is going to be happening in space, and more things they're going to have to deal with, and of course these freighter ships might have to upgrade, which nobody really wanted to. They like their ship the way it is, and you see how they didn't want Enterprise's help for repairs or anything. They're used to being independent. So Archer was telling them and telling the captain, things are going to change now.
Let's think about how this episode connects with the entire Star Trek universe. Do you think it fits into the canon of what we already knew happened in Star Trek already?
I think it fits in, and it fills in a lot of things, because we didn't know as much about this era.
And the Nausicaans.
Yes, and how they were pirates who raided ships, and we see that they're just going to continue to be the more aggressive race.
All the way through Next Generation.
Yeah, yes.
So I think whenever they throw in characters or species that we're familiar with, other Star Trek series, we're either going to see very much the same depictions or a different version of it. This time we saw them the same. So in the Star Trek universe, the Nausicaans are continuously bullying other people.
But yeah, Enterprise is good at developing some of these things that we saw glimpses of, and so we get to see more of them on Enterprise.
Yeah. So when I look at the episode and I weigh it out, the storytelling wise, as well as how it connects to the Star Trek universe, big bonus, LeVar Burton directing it.
And that was cool too. And I think it's, this was a good episode. I mean, it had the human element, and it's, it was mostly about humans and humans having to deal with a new situation. And so LeVar did a great job directing.
Yeah, definitely going to give this episode a thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.